Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Let's rock and roll! Bringing back the old intro music because, hey, I wrote it and I like it better. Here we are. We are live. It's Let's Solve the Universe podcast. We're going live, 10 minutes earlier than we said we were going to? But that is totally cool because we have Janic, Gorayeb on Zoom today, or whatever platform we're using. Maybe it is Zoom. Maybe it's not. I should probably lock down the meeting room because there's been some issues with that, hasn't there? Janic, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I am well. We were just talking, seconds ago about how we're coping through this whole COVID thing. It turns, it's been an adjustment period for everybody, hasn't it?
It has. And like we were talking about, I'm trying not to think too far ahead because I think it's best that we just try to be in the moment as much as possible. But it's difficult at times when we just don't know what to expect. So I think it's good that we just, do our part and, stay home and just be patient.
And the crazy part is, we are now at the end of week 5.
I know, it's weird. It's really weird. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, is this the end of week 5 already, working from home? Yeah,
end of week 5. It has simultaneously felt really long and really short at the same time. This has been going on for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. That's a crazy idea that we've just shut down a whole load of countries for 5 weeks.
I know, it's wild. It's totally wild. It's still a little bit surreal, I think, at times for people.
Oh, completely. I think the reality kind of hits home when you go out for groceries. Have you found that too?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been patient though, wear my mask, wash my hands, 6 feet apart, stand in line, I think people just need to be patient, And I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are doing a really good job at that and just being there for each other and just, doing our part.
Yeah, the fact that everybody is really banding together in this and really trying to take things seriously. I mean, I've seen some reports out of certain states in America where there are some protests. I gotta imagine those people are just in the minority, though. Yeah,
for sure. I've been actually staying away from news for the most part. I check in probably 2-3 times a week. I can't do it daily right now. It's just too much for me. So I'm just trying to focus on being creative and taking care of myself and, good days, bad days, of course. But,
You're a better person than me because I'm consuming it on an hourly basis. My big thing has been with all the different programs that are being announced, they change, yesterday, the Canadian Emergency Business Account, that got changed. The payroll test used to be between if your business brought in or if your business paid between $50,000 and $1 million in payroll, you could qualify for this loan. And then just yesterday, that was lowered to $20,000, and then the high end was raised to $1.5 million, which I was a bit surprised by that.
Indeed,
but
yeah.
I'm hoping, and this is my political side talking, but I'm hoping that they lower that payroll test even further, or just get rid of it, because I'm sure you and I are both. We deal with small businesses all the time. They could use the help, couldn't they?
For sure. Yeah, and my full-time job is with a nonprofit too, right? So it's been interesting times for us there too.
So in the nonprofit space, how is that? How has life changed on the ground there?
Since the first week, we all started working from home. So there's 25 of us on our team at it's the National Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada. So that's my full-time gig, and Ripple Effect Leadership is my business that I've been building on the side for a few years. And, we've had to pivot like everybody else. We had to shift 22 brain tumor walk fundraisers in 22 different cities to a virtual walk. We're going to do one day in June. So, we're doing like everybody else. We're trying to be creative and trying to just move everything virtual and hope for the best.
So you're talking about taking these walks online. I want to go down this because I've been seeing a couple of people post about some exercise stuff they're doing at home, including riding their bicycle and being part of this virtual Tour de France or whatever they are. What are you doing to take those walks online? Tell me about that.
Well, we're just in the beginning stages of launching it, so we're kind of just figuring out the next steps. But we're hoping to do like a live ceremony to get everybody pumped up across the country, and it'll be like walk all together in one day instead of 22 different cities and 22 different dates. So yeah, so we're just kind of figuring out the next steps for that.
Cool. Once you've got anything else about that, let me know. I really want to know more about it.
Will do.
I think we're now entering into a new era of being able to have those exercises at home. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, for sure.
But when we were originally talking about setting up this podcast together, you've mentioned Ripple Effect Leadership and what you do there. I bet you've got your side business there. The theme that you had mentioned to me was this theme about being creative. And you had said, I got the exact quote here. Or this is what I wanted to ask you was you had talked about you had been leaning towards creativity and how it's been a part of your life, your entire life, and you had this epiphany around creativity.
Yeah.
Epiphanies are always awesome. Tell me about the epiphany.
Epiphany / I call it my beautiful mind moment. You know, that movie Beautiful Mind. Who's the actor? I can't remember his name now.
Oh, don't ask me actors, man.
Yeah, or like Matt Damon from like Good Will Hunting, where he's like, you know, that was kind of my moment a few months ago. But I'll get to that in a second. But I always tell the story that my mom, when she was pregnant with me and also with my sister, who's 6 years older, all she did was color. She said that my dad just couldn't bring like enough coloring books home when she was pregnant. She just always wanted to color. And I guarantee you that right now, Mom is coloring at home. So it's always been just a big part of me. And a few months ago, I got my flip chart paper out and I got my markers out because that's what I do. And people who know me know that I have a lot of Post-it notes and a lot of flip charts and a lot of markers. It's just who I am. It's just always been a big part of my life. But I basically mapped out my career. I mapped out my creativity within my own personal life, just like crafts I've done over the years, different creative projects I've done over the years. And I just kind of mapped it all out. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, like I'm a creative curator. Like that's what I do. I bring creativity into everything that I do, whether it's like workshops, facilitating workshops, building presentations, doing events, even when I have dinner parties, like people can always expect there's going to be little creative name tags. And there's, you know, it's just, and as you can see behind me, like color is a big part of my life and creativity is just at the center of it. So yeah, it was this moment, this aha moment where I was like, oh yeah, like I'm all about creative leadership, right? And I'm all about curating experiences for people. Like that's a really big part of what I love to do is I want people to leave an event or a workshop or whatever, a social gathering, just feeling really energized and pumped up.
Well, that would explain why you took on the role of running Pachacha London. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about curating creativity.
Yeah, so Pachacha, that's a really fun event. Pachacha means chit chat in Japanese, and I had the opportunity to do a Pachacha style leadership presentation at a leadership conference a few years ago, and it was my first time being introduced to the format, and I loved it so much that I reached out to Pachacha head office in Tokyo. I always joke, I'm so international now. I'm just going to email Tokyo. But I reached out to them because I noticed that London, Ontario wasn't a host city. So I connected with them about 4 years ago, and they shared a bunch of great resources. And there's over 1,200 cities around the world that host this. And basically, they're short, creative, and concise presentations. So each presenter organizes a PowerPoint presentation, just 20 slides. So it's Pachacha 20 by 20. Each slide automatically advances every 20 seconds. So each presenter has just under 7 minutes. And as you know, you've attended one yourself, to tell a story, to share an experience, to talk about something that's important to them in their lives. They can talk about anything that they want. And we're in our 4th year. Our next Pachacha event is scheduled for May 12th. I have decided to take it virtual, but we'll see what the uptake is on that. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But it's a great event. It's super fun. You always get such different and diverse presentations, and that's what I love about it, and that's why I love how creative it is, and people just willing to share their experiences, whether they're positive or negative experiences.
And every single one of the events that you've put on, the Pachacha events that you've put on, I found that even in those moments where people describe their struggles, they always still come out with some sort of positive spin or something really positive that you can take away from it.
Absolutely.
And just the sheer creativity that they put into those presentations. Like, you think about, you get 20 slides, so you get 7 minutes and 20 slides, right? Mm-hmm. And they're automatically advancing the whole time.
Yeah. So I'm always, trying to remind presenters, like, practice, right? Practice before you go up on stage, practice with your slides advancing, because then you kind of get the flow of how much you should be saying on each slide, as opposed to just kind of doing it the night of. So I always try to encourage people to practice a little bit.
Oh yeah. No, 7 minutes goes by real freaking fast.
Yeah, it does.
Especially when those slides are advancing. And sometimes, you know what people don't factor in when you practice it at home? Laughter.
Exactly. Pauses, or, sometimes we speed up because we're nervous, right? Or we miss a page, or whatever the case may be. And, people don't have to do it by memory. Some people have notes. Some people have their iPhone that they're checking notes on. Some people kind of do it off the cuff. But I do always suggest that people have some notes and practice a little bit so that they're not overwhelmed when they're up there.
So this idea of you being a creative curator, that now makes perfect sense why you took on the Pachacha London.
Yeah.
Now, this epiphany that you had about being a creative curator, like, take me back. How long ago did this epiphany happen? I
would say early fall last year. Last year, I would say 2019, it was weird. I think a lot of people had a hard time with 2019 for whatever reasons, personal and professional reasons. And I didn't really do much with my business last year. I was kind of stuck. I didn't really know what I wanted to do and where I wanted to take Ripple Effect. And it wasn't until after I did that huge brain dump, as I call it, that I realized that this is the creativity, and the creative curator stuff is the center of Ripple Effect leadership. So I've been slowly planning since then, slowly kind of reshifting. So I'm actually going to be doing like a rebranding this year. I'm going to do a new website. Just trying to lock down a little bit more focus on what I'm offering to clients, whether it's individual clients or organizations who want to work on not only creative leadership, but personal leadership. Because I would say those are the three main themes for Ripple Effect leadership. It's personal leadership. It's all about how we lead ourselves and what our core values are, and are we living those core values, and how can we build in creativity into our leadership as well.
Right. Now, so 2019, 2019 was definitely a challenging year for a lot of people. It was a real funny year that way. But even so, you do this brain dump, you figure out that you're this creative curator. Was there a specific moment that you sat back and just were like, I got to do something different? Like, what made you actually get all that material out and do it?
That's a good question. I don't even remember what I was doing earlier that day. I actually set up my video camera to time lapse it as well, because my living room was just like a total mess with paper and markers. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a moment of, you know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And when I feel overwhelmed or stressed out or have some anxiety around something, I have to create. Like, whether it's coloring or doing a craft project or creating a new workshop, doing research to write a blog post. So I think that's where it came from that day, was just like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have all these ideas. I need to mind map it, basically, and just get it up and look at it. And then, so I would say that was early fall, but I kept everything up for about 5 months in my living room, just to let it percolate. And then I would say in the last 2 months is where I really lit the fire and just like, I'm ready to rebrand and get things going again.
So this was not just a one-day thing. So when you say you left all this material up, were you adding to it during that time? Were you editing during that time?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. I would have friends and family come over. They're like, oh, this flip chart paper's still up. I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready to take it down yet. Because I knew, like, every few days I had another idea. I would jot it down. And yeah, it came together really beautifully. I really enjoyed the process. And that's what I think why I love creating, is the process as well. And, you hit roadblocks and you come across challenges, and you just have to take time to figure it out. And I don't know, creativity you always get to the end point. It just may take a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. And we kind of get to this. It's the way that you map this out, this creativity. It reminds me of something that a programmer that I follow, Scott Hanselman. He talks about this idea of you feel overwhelmed. You've got all these different organizational tools on computers. Screw all that nonsense. Just if you've got a whole bunch of stuff in your head, just sink it to paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whatever that looks like for you, right? Whether it's just a pen, a pencil, markers, a book, whatever the case may be, whatever people are, what they gravitate to. I think it's just important to definitely put it down, dump it. I'm not a journaler. Like I can't sit down and just like write and write and write and write. I wish I could. But like this morning, preparing for this podcast, I wanted to like map out some ideas of things to share with you. So I did a mind map, right? So it was for me just a way to get my thoughts down and to get the jitters, to push the jitters aside. And I'm looking at it right now. I'll show it to you.
Oh, cool. So, whoa, that is detailed. And
this is just like, probably a quarter of what I've done, creatively throughout my life. So it's nice to see because it's interesting. I was chatting with a friend a couple years ago about, ripple effect leadership and, it's hard to build when you're working full time. And, I haven't really done much. She's like, yeah, you have. And she like listed all these things that I had done like the first 2 years. I'm like, oh yeah, I think it's a good idea to also write down your accomplishments to remind yourself, you know what, it is moving forward and it's going to happen.
Speaking of the accomplishments, so two things on that one. Just before we move off of that, the mind map that you created, for those who are listening to the audio portion afterwards, can you describe what you've created?
Sure. So in the middle, I have the word creativity, all nice and colorful. And then I kind of broke it down to like different times in my life. Or different segments of my life, I should say. So career, like where I've been creative that way. So an example of that would be like the different workshops I've done. Probably in my 20-year career of working in nonprofit, I probably have done, 300 workshops, presentations, and I've always inserted creativity into everything. If I look at like just my lifelong creativity, just like different craft projects and that sort of thing that I've done. I look at the things that I've done in my communities, like Pachecha. I've done a flash mob. I did a dance flash mob years ago. I had a 40 before 40 blog where I wanted to accomplish 40 things from the age of 37 to the age of 40. And so like that was very creative. Just looking at my list here. All the things I've done creatively through ripple effect leadership, the things I've done creatively during quarantine. Like I've hosted 2 live coloring sessions on Facebook where me and a bunch of people just get together and just color from home. That's it.
What made you want to do the live coloring session?
I don't know. I just thought I'd try it, right? And that's the great thing about creativity. It's just all about trial and error. You don't know what's going to work, but people loved it. So I did it a second time. And we did it through Facebook Live where I have like the video camera just like facing down on my coloring sheet. But I think I might do it through Zoom next time so we can like see each other and show each other our coloring and like have a drink and toast and do all that jazz.
Right. Yeah. Make it a little bit more interactive.
Yeah.
So it's not just you coloring, it's a bunch of your friends.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been fun. So yeah, that's kind of what I have mapped out on my little creativity mind map that I did this morning.
I really think it's important to jot down those achievements. The one, what I keep around for that is I've got a binder that like, if I get a certification or if I've got, if I get published in an article or something, I'll shove that in the accomplishment binder. And like every now and then it's like, oh yeah, I need to refer back to that for some reason. There's something important that helps lend credibility to what I'm saying. And that comes in handy as a reminder. You do a lot in life. It's hard to shove it all in your head all at the same time, isn't it? Absolutely. I also have a happy file electronically in my email, but also at the office in print where if somebody sends me like a really nice email or I've gotten really great feedback on an event, I put it in my happy file. So like those days that I'm like having a hard time or it's like really struggling or just stuck on a project, sometimes I'll just go back and like, okay, you know what? It gives you kind of a boost of energy and it reminds you that, you're still on the right track. That happy file. I like that. More people should have a happy file. Outlook should have a happy folder.
Right?
Like that thing should just be a smiley face folder that it just ships with Outlook and all your happy emails go in there.
Exactly. That's a great idea.
Like my happy file used to be the invoice folder, but you know, now I'd go for the compliments and testimonials.
Fair.
Because like, you can definitely, there's lots of ways to make money, but it's interesting to kind of be through the process of making lots of money and then going through lean periods and then making money again. And it's like, yeah, happiness is like, yeah, life is easier when you're making money, but it's not everything, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And, taking those moments to remind ourselves what we're grateful for too.
Oh, totally. And and you think about it, even in the midst of this whole quarantine COVID-19 thing, holy crap, do we have a lot to be grateful for?
Yeah, I mean, so many people struggling right now. I'm so grateful that I get to work from home, and it wasn't a hard transition for me because I was already working from home a few days a week. But, it's hard for so many people right now with not having jobs and, parents with kids at home. I don't know how they're doing it with homeschooling and all that jazz. So I know we've been, my friends who have had a few struggles here and there, but, I'm just trying to encourage them to, try to build in some creativity as well into those days because it does help your mental health and it helps with focus and just feeling, it just feels good.
Yeah. And what about building in routine too?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've been able to build in creativity very easily into my life because for me, once again, as I mentioned earlier, like anytime I'm stuck on something or feeling upset about something or whatever the case may be, or just want to just turn my mind off a little bit, I'll do something creative. But I'm also participating in the 100-day project this year. It's the second time I'm doing it. It's like a worldwide social media creativity project. So basically each person who participates for 100 days straight, they do something creative. And so some people might work on a particular project. Some people might paint every day with a certain theme. I had some ideas in mind before the 100-day project started on April 7th, but then the whole world shut down and I didn't have time to get all my supplies. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. So I literally just bought a sketchbook at the dollar store and I'm just doing something creative on each page every single day. So whether it's coloring or a collage or my mind map was actually my day 11 of the 100-day project. So yeah, just really trying to build in creativity in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's just for 15, 20 minutes, it really does energize you. It'll energize you.
Oh, I bet. Now, the 100-day project, I'm familiar with the 100 days of code. I wonder if I know that there's a big developer push right now for the 100 days of code. Is a 100-day project, is that put on by a particular organization or is that just
her name is
community-driven thing?
Yeah, her name escapes me right now, but it's a woman, I think, in the States who started it years back. And it's just grown and grown and grown. And so it's hashtag the 100-day project. And I think there's thousands and thousands of people who participate around the world. Yeah, but it's incredible. All creative. Yeah, all creative projects. Yeah.
All creative projects. So get your creativity on. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Question that just entered my mind about creativity. You're the creativity expert.
Okay.
How do you get creative? In other words, how do you actually, how do you spur those ideas? How would you define creative and how would you get into that mode? Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Specifically for the 100-day project, what I've done is I've taken a bunch of resources, crafting resources, just things that inspire me to create into a box. And so when I'm stuck with trying to figure out what I want to do for that day, I'll kind of just play around. So there's different color paper and there's double-sided tape and there's a bunch of scrapbooking stuff basically. And I just kind of sift through it and see what kind of speaks to me. Sometimes I'll, see something on Instagram or on YouTube that inspires me and it'll just kind of trigger wanting to be creative as well. But I think that the number one thing is to make sure that you create an environment that allows you to be creative. So keeping those things out visually, so when you see them, like my markers are on my desk at all times, you know, having this box for the 100-day project, it's out in my living room, so I see it to remind me, and it's easier to be creative. If you have all your creative tools shoved in a box somewhere, you're not going to be creative. You're not going to take the time to do it. So I think if you carve it into your environment, it's a lot easier to be creative, and whatever that looks like for people.
So but the idea is, as long as it's visible, you'll actually be tempted to act on it instead of, you know, keeping it all in a drawer. And because I'm thinking about, I got a whole bunch of whiteboard markers, and, you know, and actually I can, for those of you playing the home game and watching this at home, I'm currently rooting around my desk, and apparently it's not in that drawer. Where are they? I can't find things live. This is the second demo that's gone. Oh, here they are. I'm like, this is the second demo that's gone sideways live today.
No, you're good. You're good.
I did a YouTube stream earlier today, and I was trying to record a demo video, and I was like, oh, shoot, this part isn't working. Let me just pause this and diagnose it. Oh, no, I can't pause. Okay, we're going to debug this live and hopefully not look like a complete tool. What I've got here, I'm holding up on camera, are these index cards. Mm-hmm. And the thing I love about index cards, you know, I do a lot of app development, and we've got our event app. So, you know, I'm doing design all the time, right? Mm-hmm. The thing that I like about these index cards that I'm holding up is if you compare them to the size of I got to clean that phone. If you compare them to the size of this smartphone, they're about the same size, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So, like, one of the things I love to do when I'm working on, say, redesigning a user interface, as I'm a huge fan of get the index cards out, get the 8.5 by 11s out, get a whole bunch of different color pens, and just start sketching. Mm-hmm. You know, absolutely. Do that rapid prototyping.
Yeah, the brain dump, right?
Oh, yeah. And just
the brain dump.
The thing I love about doing the rapid prototyping, just doing it on paper, is like you can whip up a design real quick, show it to people. They go, yeah, that kind of looks neat. Or, you know, oh, no, that kind of looks like garbage, and here's why. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, cool. It took 2 minutes. Everybody can crap all over it all they want. Yeah. Whereas if they see something that is of higher quality, like a finished wireframe or something on a that's been produced by a computer, a hi-fi prototype, it's like they'll not want to criticize it. Yeah. The average person will not want to criticize it as much because that looks like you put effort into it, and we don't want to be mean.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the word criticize, because I think that's a big part of creativity, is that people get worried about sharing their creativity because they're worried about being criticized, or they're worried that people aren't going to like it. But the bottom line is, when you're being creative, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for your own mental health. You're doing it for your own, you know, enjoyment, you know? And so I think that's, you know, I think back to like when we're kids. When we're kids, we don't worry about being creative. Like we jump in, we do things, we try things out, we experiment. But the older we get, the more scared we are to be creative. And I want to remind adults that it's okay to build in coloring. It's okay to build in creativity into your life, even if you're an adult. Creativity it's not a hobby. It's like, it's a way of being.
You would love the interview that I did yesterday with Tammy Valyers. Okay. Did you catch that at all?
Not yet, no.
So she is the author of this Grow Your Hero series. It's meant for kindergarten and elementary school aged kids.
Michael Doyle working with her?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so everything seems to come through Doyle.
Yeah, right?
I know. That guy knows everybody.
He does.
But she was talking about just that idea of that as adults we're afraid of being criticized, but kids, they're not nearly as ingrained yet. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking about that as you're talking about that, worried when you create something, you get worried about being criticized if you put that out to the world. Mm-hmm. I wonder too, even if you create something, does that necessarily mean that you have to put it out for everybody to see?
No, you're right. No, absolutely not. And a lot of people just keep it to themselves. Absolutely. And still, get the benefits out of it.
Because that's something that I've thought about with the podcast a few times, like just on a personal level. There's been a few podcasts where I've thought, I don't know if I want to publish that one, or I don't know, like, I've been worried about having either certain guests on or, covering certain topics, because it's like, what if I train wreck my career with this one?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I felt that way a few times with Pachecha, with the Pachecha
really?
nights. Yeah, there's been all in all, everybody was great, but there were a couple of people that I had to say, no, you can't present on that topic. It was too political, or they are a political figure, and it felt like more of they wanted to campaign, So yeah, I understand that fear, especially if you're doing something live, right? You don't know how it's going to go. You don't know what path it's going to take. So kudos to you for doing that.
I've found that since switching the podcast to a live format, that it's gotten better. I think it's gotten better.
Okay.
It's like because I used to, when I did the first, let's call it the first season, the first, say, roughly 15 or 20 episodes, that was pre-recorded, edited, and then put out to the net. And the thing that I really enjoy about being live is there were instances where, I found that guests, sometimes held back because it was like, oh, can we edit that out? And that would just completely screw the flow of the interview.
Sure.
And then it's like, okay, yeah, I got to go back and edit this later on. And you lose the flow, and the listener can always tell. Sure. When that happens.
I get that. Well, I asked you the other day, I'm like, are we doing this live? Are we doing a video? This is my first podcast, right? So I had no idea what to expect, but I'm glad we're doing it live, because it challenges me as well, and it challenges you, and we can kind of feed off each other, right? And support each other that way.
Yeah, and this is only between you, me, and the rest of the internet. What could go wrong?
Right? I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's all good. I'm like, every time I take a sip, I'm like, don't spill on yourself.
Yeah, don't spill. I had that just before I went on the podcast. I filled this tea mug up just a little bit too much. Overflowed, and now I had to use a piece of paper as a napkin.
It happens. Hey, how many podcasts have you done?
Oh,
so this is number what, would you say?
Let me go to the podcast dashboard, and I can tell you right away.
I love a good dashboard.
This is going to be episode number 28.
Wow.
So I've done 28 of these.
Well, I'm honored to be one of your guests, so thank you.
It is, when I set out to do this podcast, originally it was all about because the conversation that we're having right now is the kind of stuff that I was having in coffee shops with people. Let's chat and talk about things, and because there's everybody's doing something interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I was getting frustrated with was like, okay, well, now what are we going to do with that? And then I was like, okay, well, let's get these recorded so the rest of the world can enjoy the awesome conversation that we're having.
Totally. I love it.
It doesn't, who cares how many downloads there are? You can always link to, that's the thing I love about the podcast is now that I've had it for about, a couple of years now, and I'm seeing the downloads kind of go up and down over time, is some of these are now, some of the old podcasts are now starting to get more listens because I've been more active. And it's a ton of fun to see, to circle back and reconnect with people that were on the podcast before and go, hey, how you doing? Let's talk. Let's see what you're up to. Cool. So it's a fun medium to explore. I feel like if we want to bring it back to the theme of creativity, I mean, my background is partially in broadcast and audiovisual. This is a chance for me to play.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. Creativity is all about fun and play, and I think when it comes to leadership as well, people take it a little bit too seriously sometimes. And so I think that more and more people need the opportunities to build in creativity into work, and to also to have that courage to do that. and to be supportive. I think that when we show vulnerability for creativity as well, it builds stronger connections and it builds your personal leadership as well.
So do you work with people one-on-one and help them foster that creative, like how to become a creative leader?
Good question. So right now my focus is on doing some online workshops around personal leadership and creative personal leadership. And really what that boils down to is figuring out what your core values are and how you live those core values through personal leadership. And I became passionate about personal leadership when I did my Master's of Leadership through Royal Roads University in Victoria, BC. Yeah, I did that from 2013 to 2015 while working full-time.
Oh, wow.
That was a little tough.
2 years, 2 years to a master's. Holy crap.
And it was all online, but we had two-week residencies on campus at Royal Roads, which, just side note, every day I got to walk by Hatley Castle, which is the X-Men school in the X-Men movies. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm like, are you guys filming? No. So that's a side note. But through the program, the first 6 months was all focused on personal leadership, and meaning like, how do we lead ourselves, or do we build self-reflection practices within our leadership practice as well? And that my big theme and my big message through Ripple Effect Leadership is really leave your title at the door. Leadership is about how we lead ourselves, and you shouldn't have to have a title to feel like a leader. And so that's really my focus with working with clients right now. So I'm doing a lot of more one-on-one like workshops, but like small group workshops right now. So of course they were supposed to be in person this month, but I'm doing one online on Thursday, the 23rd, and then also the 26th of April.
So that leads me down another rabbit hole, which is you talk about personal leadership versus I think people are more used to hearing the idea of just leaders. Corporate leaders like CEOs or presidents or managers. So what's the difference between, say, somebody who's a manager or a president or a vice president and somebody in personal leadership? What's the division line there?
Yeah, I think that with personal leadership, you have to just not worry about the hierarchy, right? Because it's really about how we lead ourselves and how we present ourselves, and also being willing to facilitate growth, to be more accountable, to be open and honest and vulnerable with colleagues and say, I'm having a really bad day today. I'm not present in this meeting, or thinking back to a meeting that you had or a one-on-one conversation with somebody and asking yourself, how did I handle that? Did I handle that well? And always wanting to learn and always wanting to practice leadership. So for me, that's the biggest difference, is that all leaders, regardless of your title, all people should be practicing personal leadership. And I think that we forget sometimes, especially for people who are higher up in organizations, sometimes they forget to do that for themselves. And I think that when CEOs and directors and managers, whatever the case may be of those titles, when those people show that vulnerability and show that they're working on their leadership, it goes a long way with their team. And I think it builds capacity, it builds trust, it builds just being honest with each other and inspiring others. So that's really my focus. It's about modeling the way, right? It's about walking the talk and talking the walk, or whatever. Yeah. That's whatever. Walk the talk. So that's where I'm really kind of focusing with Ripple Effect Leadership.
Now, is personal leadership something that you've been interested in for a long time? And was it something that you discovered through this Master's in Leadership?
Yeah, it was definitely something that's a good question. I discovered it through a Master's of Leadership. So at that time in my career, it was a very difficult time, just because of a leadership shift within an organization I was working for. And at the time, the whole team was just not doing well. And I went into this Master's of Leadership thinking, what am I doing? What is this a good time for me to be doing this? I'm not a manager. I'm not a director. I'm not an executive director of an organization. Why am I doing this program? It was literally the first essay that we had to write and the first small in-person group session that I had with my professor and my peers within my cohort during first residency was my first epiphany about personal leadership. And we had to submit an essay about a personal leadership challenge. And so we'd submitted that a couple of weeks before our first residency at Royal Roads. And basically my personal leadership challenge was all around like that, exactly what I just said, like not feeling like I'm a leader because I don't have the title. And so when we met as a group, our cohort, in person, our professor had read all of our essays. We each got a Post-it note with a question on it. And it was personalized to us based on our personal leadership challenge. And I looked at it and the Post-it note said, Janic, where do you get your source of power? Or where does your source of power come from? And my first reaction was, I don't have any power. I don't have any power at work. I don't feel like I'm being heard right now, with that new leadership that we had. Like it just, I didn't connect to it. And it wasn't until probably a week into the first residency where I was like, oh, the power's within me. Like it was just like, and it was just a moment of clarity for me that it's really about how you lead yourself. So if it's a really crappy situation at work, it's still all about how we lead ourselves. It's about how we show up. It's about how we support our colleagues. It's about how we can, just support each other, even in those tough times, regardless of your title. And so that's really where I started to think more and more about personal leadership and how it's helped me shift my perspective around leadership. And yeah, that's kind of that was my very first epiphany about it.
Wow. So that was the moment that you realized that it's despite the situation, the circumstances that are going on around you, however chaotic those might be, that you still have some choice in how to respond to it, in how to deal with it, and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah. And, the resources that I offer and the workshops that I offer, they're tools for your toolkit, for your leadership toolkit, right? They're reminders about how we should move through, working with colleagues and working within organizations, and also just, collaborative projects, whatever the case may be. And really just that we can nurture it. And it's a practice, just like yoga is a practice or mindfulness is a practice. Leadership is a practice as well. Nobody will ever get it right 100%. Even the best CEOs and executive directors of the world, right? Nobody gets everything perfect all the time. But it's about showing up and saying, you know what, I need help, or asking for help, or I screwed up and how can we fix it? Or, just really just listening to your team and also building in a lot of self-reflection. I think self-reflection is really important, especially when it comes to personal leadership and living your core values. So I think I mentioned earlier, like when you leave a meeting that really didn't go very well, ask yourself, like, did I live my core values, or did I live the core values of my organization just now? Or you're just having a tough time, and am I being open about it? Am I asking for help? So yeah, I'm just very passionate about it.
Can we somehow get you to talk to the rest of the IT industry? Because, oh my God, I wish I would have learned some of this stuff a long time ago.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do say that. And that's one of the first things I say in my workshops and my presentations is leave your title at the door, right? And, another epiphany I had also during my time doing my Royal Roads Masters, when I was starting the Masters, I thought I wanted to be an executive director of a nonprofit. I've been working in nonprofit basically my entire career, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until halfway through the program I was like, yeah, nope, I have no desire to manage people. Like I just don't it's just not my passion right now. And that's what steered me into starting Ripple Effect Leadership and starting to focus on all those core themes that I have. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing that you realized it before you became the executive director of a not-for-profit.
Right. I would love to, obviously I'm the founder of my own business. So that's where I'm focusing my leadership efforts in that sense with that title. But once again, it's just, I think that, I just think that people need to be reminded that leadership isn't always about titles and hierarchy. I mean, hey, you have to have somebody in the organization to make decisions. I get that. I'm just saying, make your entire team feel like leaders. And I think it goes a long way.
Well, make your entire team feel valued.
Valued. Absolutely.
Like I've worked in a lot of environments. Like I've worked in environments where everybody on the team was valued. They took their opinions and ideas very seriously, and it was very rewarding to be part of that environment. And I've also been part of environments where it was like, it's you do it because I say so, and that was the default.
And that's what it was like during that time when I started my master's with the leadership switch. That's what was happening, right? It was a very top-down hierarchical leader, and I use leader very loosely because it was a challenge. Yeah, it was a challenge.
At the same time, I feel like there's like everything else, I feel like there's a balance in life to all this. Because I think back to the first time that I ever hired somebody. I had a intern for the summer a couple summers ago, and this was their first real programming job ever. And when I went into this, I said to myself, I'm not going to be that boss that, I hate the bosses that always said, do it because I said so. Like that's such a crap way to win the argument, I thought. I was like, I'm totally not going to be that. We've got a week to go. We've got this really super important deadline to hit. And I'm like, okay, and I'm getting asked these questions about why are we doing it this way? And I'm trying to explain it. And then eventually I finally just say, you know what? We need to discuss this later. For now, I just need you to do it because I said so. Sure. And then I was like, I walked away from that conversation and went and grabbed a coffee. And I'm like, shit, I just became that manager.
And it happens, but you recognized it, right? Right in that moment, you realized, oh crap, like probably shouldn't have said that. We've all been in those situations, right? But I think just reflecting on it, owning it, and trying to adjust in the future is the way to go.
Well, and the good news was that afterwards we did have that conversation and said, like, here's why I said we need to just do it this way for now, and we'll explain it later. Like, we don't have time to talk about this right now. We just need to get this thing out the door. I need you to trust my judgment. And like there is a bit of that involved, but it was, it's definitely like leadership is friggin' hard.
It is hard. Exactly. It is hard. And like I said, it's a practice. Nobody will get it perfectly. But I think that if people are open to learning more about themselves, because like that first 6 months of that Masters of Leadership, it was all about personal leadership. Like the very first assignment that we had to do, was when we went back to work after the 2 weeks of first residency, we had to ask 3 colleagues what we could do better at. And our only response that we were allowed to give was, thank you. No, nope. You just have to sit back and take it, basically, right? And then we had to write about it and reflect on it, and and then you start working. You show vulnerability with your colleagues, right? It really actually strengthened my relationship with those 3 colleagues. Not that we had bad relationships before, but maybe a couple of them were like, we didn't work together as much, or maybe we had a couple of like minor conflicts in the past, but like it was fascinating. And the other thing about personal leadership, when you do all that self-reflection, when you do that work, like that first 6 months, everybody in my cohort, we all like cried and had a breakdown at one point because we're like, because you realize the areas that you really need to work on, but also some of the challenges that you're having within your own organization.
Oh, I bet. Do you remember / can you share what your 3 things were? Do you remember that?
One of them was being very emotional.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah. Being very emotional on certain topics, or like kind of pushing my agenda sometimes, like on a project. Yeah. So, it taught me to sit back more and ask more questions instead of just tell. And I think I realized this over the years is that is something that I've tried to do, is asking more questions because of my role, because of all my different job positions within my nonprofit career has been a lot about education. So like teaching people, telling people, right? And so I realized at one point a couple of years ago, I think that's why it was hard for me to shift that into asking more questions instead of just being like, this is the way it is, right? Like, do it now. This is the way it is. But it's like, asking more questions really does bring out like asking clarifying questions really does help build a relationship as well with your colleagues or with anybody.
Oh yeah. I mean, the one parallel that I've seen between, because I read up a lot on, I like to read up on education stuff, and I like to read up on sales techniques. And I am starting to come to the realization that I think selling and teaching are actually the same thing. You're just just the currency is a little bit different.
Sure.
But in selling, in fact, I think I've got the book right here. So the book I'm holding up right here is called Selling for Dummies. I don't care. I read for Dummies series. It's awesome.
No judgment.
You want to learn something quick, go grab a For Dummies book. Whoever owns For Dummies series right now, you guys are awesome.
Well, and they make their books interesting, right? Because there's the way they have it designed and stuff.
Well, and then there's also like, I mean, the one thing I love in this is they always put they have a cheat sheet or something, or it's just broken down in really good, interesting ways. They're just really simple to follow. The one thing that I like about this particular book, it's written by a guy named Tom Hopkins, huge fan of him, and he talks about this idea of asking lots of questions as a salesperson, instead of just like talking like your typical used car salesman, right? Just talking, this is the greatest car for you.
Right.
Just ask questions to get them involved and to get them thinking about, what life would be like if they had that product. What life, what are their problems? Because like how on earth are we going to help people fix their issues or problems or whatever they might be, or find solutions for them if we don't know what the hell their problems are?
Yeah, exactly. And that actually just reminded me, like, the thing about personal leadership is that you have to want to put the work in. Not everybody does. And that was one of the challenges that we as a cohort also had when we were done our 2-year program. So we're like, we're going to go back to our organizations and we're going to save the world and we're going to make all these changes to, this and that. And our professors were like, whoa. You are here because you want to be here. Not everybody in your team wants to self-reflect. Not everybody in your team wants to talk about leadership. And you know what? It is true. It is so true.
Oh yeah, I've heard a variant of that quote from so many organizations. That it's just just because you're open to change doesn't mean that everybody else is, man. And that there's a reason why we have that saying, lead a horse to water. It's like you can do that. It's no guarantee that they're going to go down and take a sip.
Yeah. And, I think that's also another shift for Ripple Effect leadership right now is like, I want to work with people who want to put the work in for themselves. I want to work with organizations and teams that want not just a workshop, but like what happens after the workshop. I want to help organizations and teams like take the next steps to build an action plan, because there are so many amazing consultants and there are so many amazing leadership programs or, team building programs. They're all really good. It doesn't matter which program or which consultant organizations hire when it comes down to it. I mean, you hire somebody based on your needs and your team needs and all that. But what happens afterwards is what's really important. And I think that a lot of organizations spend a lot of money on all this training and then shit happens afterwards. Or nothing happens because, go ahead.
Or they spend the money on the motivational speaker.
Yeah, and I get it. Resources are a challenge. People's time and energy is a challenge, and not knowing how to take those next steps. So I really try to build like an action plan for organizations and for people. Like, these are the things that you should work on, or let me help you implement it. Because once again, whether the topic is conflict management or, building a better team or, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's really what happens after that. Because so many times I've heard people say, well, my organization hired, such and such person or such and such workshop, or we spent thousands and thousands of dollars, but we're still having the same challenges as a team, or we're still not making any progress, or we're not shifting and adjusting.
Yeah, I see that. I see that in the software development world too. I've given recommendations that it's like, okay, well, that report just went and sat on a shelf for 2 years and nothing happened with it. Yeah. And it's like, thanks for the big check of writing that report. Like, that was great. But, at the end of the day, I was like, I would rather, obviously I'm going to cash the check, but like, I would find it 10 times more rewarding if you guys actually took action on the damn thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, if you're not willing to make that change, like I can write all the reports in the world, but you got to be ready to make that change. And I like that. I like your idea of having that action plan it reminds me very much, again, of my own, of the event stuff that we do. Cause we focus like the big eye opener for me that like with my event app that we were on to something huge was we started putting metrics in it to see what people were doing. And, people would log into the app and they, on the day of, there'd be that huge spike in usage. And it's like, okay, good. People are using the app. That's a good thing. But then going back and seeing people use it days later, weeks later, months later, years later, and looking back and going, holy shit, people are going back a year or more later and double checking things that were posted about this event, like figuring out like what were their notes, who were the speakers, grabbing the slides. We found a quarter of all of our app use was happening afterwards. And it's like, and I think that's for us, that's how we've been starting to pivot is like, this is more than just, you put an app in place and there's some technology and yay, aren't we modern? It's like, what, you're asking a bunch of people to give up 2-3 days out of their life. I mean, now that we're moving to more online events, we're still asking them to give up some of their time.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we're working from home. It's harder to focus at home than it is in an office.
Absolutely.
Like we're asking people to focus for a set amount of time. We're asking them to participate for a set amount of time. What are you doing afterwards to make sure that they're getting a return, that you're getting a return on investment as a business that's running this sort of thing, and they're getting a return on their time and effort invested?
Yeah.
Like how are you translating that into results for your organization, monetary or otherwise?
Absolutely. I think it's good to have like a short-term plan and a long-term plan with those action items, like a 3-month plan, 6 months and 12 months, and then check in as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a matter of, I think people just feel overwhelmed and not knowing where to start after this training or the training that they get or the workshops that they have access to. But, everybody needs to be on board, right? To move things forward. And that's when the hierarchy is important. It needs to come from the top. It needs to be all the leaders, all the managers, directors, whatever you call them, within your organization, like modeling the way. They have to. And if it's not happening there, it's not going to happen. It's not, and hence it's not going to ripple through, hence the metaphor, the ripple effect metaphor. Like,
I was just about to ask you about the ripple effect because I was just like, I bet there's a metaphor here.
Yep. So the ripple effect was the metaphor I used in my organizational leadership project that I had to do for my master's. And it was all about, the research project was about living our core values. That it's not enough to have, an organization to have a list of core values up on their wall or in an HR manual, because organizations spend so much time developing their core values, and then a lot of organizations don't ever refer to them again. I mean, I have friends who have worked for organizations for 20 years, and I ask them, "What are your core values?" They're like, "I don't freaking know," Right? So I don't know. So my point is that living our core values and using those core values to build a culture of communication, a culture of collaboration ripples through an organization, whether positively or negatively, depending on how people are using them or referring to them or living them. So that's where I got the name of my company. Yeah, Ripple Effect Leadership.
It makes perfect sense. And really, if you're absolutely right. If the upper management, if they don't have the buy-in, if your boss doesn't believe in it, it's like, it's another checkbox that's going to get checked, and that report's going to go into a digital file somewhere, and it's never going to get looked at again.
Yeah. And then I think it's okay to speak up in meetings and different times when you're working with people as well. Like if somebody says something about a project or about a client, whatever the case may be, if they say something negative or something that doesn't sit well with you, I think it's okay to say, I don't know that we're living our core value of XYZ when we're saying that or doing that. And reminding people, you know what, we do have core values in this organization. And a lot of people apply for jobs because of the core values of an organization. And then they start a job at the company and then nobody ever talks about the core values.
I find that especially my personal experiences, especially within the tech industry, is that's an area that a lot of people struggle with. Is it's like, what are the core values? Startups seem to have nailed that one somewhat. But like you talk about even a tech department at, say, a big Fortune 500 or a bank or something, it's like, it's not always obvious, like, how do these core values translate into what you're working on? And, for kind of somebody who's more, which side of the brain is that? I don't know, logical side of the brain is like I feel like those can feel kind of soft and, well, my job is writing code, or my job is making this technical process happen, or my job is working on workflow. What for somebody who is maybe upper management or a leader by title in maybe a more technical environment dealing with more of the engineering or logical minded types that might look at that and go, yeah, whatever, core values, and I'm speaking from experience here because I personally did that. I'm just like, I don't care. I'm here to do my job and go. What advice would you have for those managers and those leaders to get their team on board?
Yeah, so actually a couple of organizations I worked with in the last couple of years, that's what we focused on. Like, what do the core values look like? And giving examples. So, breaking down what that core value means with your job and everybody else's job, like different projects that it connects to or different, work that you have to do. So I think that can't just have the core value, just the word. Like, you have to really break it down. Like, what does it mean for your team and your organization to live the core value of respect, collaboration, hope, creativity, integrity, whatever the case may be, and breaking it down and showing people, like, when you do this, you are living the core value of integrity. When you do this, we are living the core value of collaboration. And then maybe giving that visual to people might be helpful.
It just dawned on me too, and thinking, especially on the technical side, like I've thought about in cases where I've been a programmer on a team, and it's like, okay, if we do things this way, yes, we can get the product out the door, but is that going to be the best thing for our customers? Does that fulfill our mission? And it's like, well, we're going to have a month of technical debt that we need to undo that management's never going to buy into.
Sure.
They're going to be like, well, that feature shipped. You should be working on this. What do you mean you have to rework this? And it's like, well, now we can if you could give that, that technical team that voice to say, like, look, this is, if we do things this way, can we get things done? Yeah. But, this is a violation of our core values. Maybe that's part of it.
Absolutely. And I think giving people a visual, right? It's also a reminder. Like, even if you had like the core values on the wall, but breaking it down as examples of how to live those core values internally and externally. So it's not just, internal stakeholders, but it's external stakeholders as well.
And maybe even taking it a step further, I'm thinking about now, I think it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They talk about this idea of leadership, personal leadership. And the idea of your circle of influence. The author talks about he was staying at a particular hotel, and it's part of a big chain, but they actually had their local team, each of the different teams, like the housekeeping staff and the catering staff, like all these different teams came up with their own individual mission statements and core values that applied to their team, not mandated by headquarters. Like the chain had their, it's like the company brand had their mission statement, but then each of the teams took that and internalized it and made it their own.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So is that a way that you could get buy-in from all these different teams? Is say to them, make this your own.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I've done with teams in the past is think about your role within your organization in this moment and how do you live each core value, right? How do you show or experience each core value? And I think that a lot of organizations write their core values with their external stakeholders in mind, which is, of course, what you're supposed to do. We will, show integrity. We will, show collaboration. But once again, people forget that it has to be internal as well. And if people internally are not living those core values, there's going to be a negative ripple effect into your external stakeholders.
So really, it sounds like you've got a choice. If you embrace the idea of personal leadership, if you empower your people inside of your organization, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's a for-profit, whether it's a charity, if you empower everybody to take leadership of their own world, regardless of title, and you get that management buy-in, you're going to have a positive ripple that goes through there. And if you don't, you're going to have a negative ripple. Either way, you're going to have a ripple of some sort.
Absolutely. Absolutely, dude.
So
you said it perfectly.
So, well, there you go. Take it and run with it then.
Exactly. Take it and do it. Do it.
Yeah, just make it happen. And
just get it done, right? Like
yeah. I feel like that buy-in piece is so critical though.
It is. It really is. And you can't force somebody to self-reflect. You can't force somebody to make changes for themselves. You just hope to give them the tools and resources, and when they're ready, hopefully they'll jump in and do the work.
Yeah,
do the work.
Because at some point you got to do the thing.
You got to do the thing.
Yeah, go do the thing.
Yeah.
Janic, we flew through over an hour worth of awesome content. How you feel?
I feel great. Thank you. My first podcast ever.
You did your first podcast. You should be 100% proud of yourself. That's awesome.
I am, and it's going to go on my accomplishments list for the week.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
If people want to find out more about you, where can they find you on the internets?
RippleEffectLeadership.ws. I'm also on Instagram, Ripple Effect Leadership, and I'm on LinkedIn. I have a personal account on LinkedIn as well. So
nice. Well, Janic, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure. I have learned so much about personal leadership that I genuinely did not know before. So thank you for the educational tour.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, Elias, and I really, really appreciate you having me on your show.
You bet. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds
and
good.
We'll talk to you, dear listener, later on Let's Solve the Universe. Love ya!